Hello BookTube, welcome back to Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and today we have two very special guests with us. We have Kat and Ryan from the channel Biblio Obscura. If you don't watch their channel, check it out. Why not? Exactly. I'll put a link in the description and check it out. They're excellent people.
Oh, thanks. So usually you only see me, but this is my husband.
I pop in occasionally. Not for a while.
Very.
Yeah. But yeah. Hi.
And this is Bran, the angel dog.
They come and visit us for our poochie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We love
You guys are fine, but star of the show.
Yeah. He's very good at making friends, he is.
Oh.
It's like the happiest dog in the world. He's like, look at me. I've got people who pat me. You don't pat me enough.
Look, I'm getting two cuddles at once.
He's so happy. So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we thought we'd have a discussion about how to give negative reviews to minority authors without being hateful and horrible to them. How do we give constructive negative reviews as privileged white people?
Yeah, and at what point do we just have to shut the fuck up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing to talk about.
I think that you have to be aware of who the audience of the work is. So it might be different for a thriller than for literary fiction discussing slavery.
Or like a really good example when we read the book about partition in Pakistan.
Burning India.
Burning India. That was
Breaking India. Ice Candy Man.
Ice Candyman. That was a book that we didn't enjoy so much, but it was down to our lack of education, really.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's one category of sort of, I don't like it because I don't know enough, and it's not aimed at me.
Mm. And we were wondering, at what point does it fall upon the reader to educate themselves to then, I guess, re-experience? Would you reread a book? Or would you look it up along the way?
I think that kind of depends on whether you, like, that's a personal choice. But as someone talking about it in the public sphere, I think it's something you need to flag. Like, I didn't get this because I didn't get this, not because it's bad.
Yeah. Or because I'm from a place...
It's like chewing on your jewelry.
Fine. I don't need it. It's okay.
Or like, I'm from a place where I don't have to educate myself.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that's bad. So like, if you're reviewing a book and you're like, I didn't get it, it was bad, you're kind of being bad.
Right.
Yeah, I
You're
agree.
kind of
I
being
think
bad.
I think it's a little bit of like privilege speaking.
Yeah.
If you're like, all books should come up to my specific standard of education and learning.
Yeah.
So the first thing we should do is acknowledge if our education is lacking.
But how do you know if it's not?
Well,
Look, because I'm saying, for a book that you think you might know about something, so such as like the American experience, right? So for me, sorry, or for the Australian experience.
Yeah.
But if there are intersections that you're not familiar with, such as like maybe the queer experience or being a person of color, then you know a part of it, but you don't know the other part.
I think also being like self-aware of how much you don't know of other people's perspectives is a tricky skill. Like that's not something that we're all conscious of for every aspect of things, that we're lacking in that. And I guess that's part of where bigotry and not seeing people in society properly actually starts.
So as a reviewer, how would you lay that out?
Or even be aware of it.
That's really difficult because you're asking yourself to acknowledge that you're a little bit shit somewhere. Really.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my god, no. When I do stats videos, I'm like, I'm shitty. I do say that. I'm like, I'm shitty.
You're pretty harsh on yourself. Yeah.
But then, like, it leads to good things later.
Yeah.
So, I think if other people are telling us we're shitty, that means that we done fucked up.
Yeah.
Probably. But like if we're saying we're shitty, you're kind of trying to like acknowledge and get better.
Yeah.
I guess.
I also think like you can't. I come from a place as a human being where I accept that I'm a white person who is raised in a world that is racist and misogynist and like ableist and all of these things, and that I have absorbed some of that in my life. And I think once I accepted that, it was super easy, like it was heaps easier to go, well, maybe I don't know. Because you've already let go of any judgment of yourself for being raised in this environment and absorbing these things. It's not about judging yourself anymore, it's about improving. Maybe?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's about... Reading is about empathising with people, and if you're struggling to empathise with them, you've got to educate yourself on that experience more, and I think that's...
But sometimes if you're struggling to empathise with them, it's because the character isn't really 3D on the page. There's also sort of the flip side of this conversation is what do you do when the book is actually not well constructed?
Yes.
So,
That's true.
as white reviewers, should we go easier on people of colour when we're reviewing their work, or is that another form of racism?
Like being condescending and patronising.
Yeah, is it... Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we should be harder on white people. Like,
Yeah.
hold them to
Well, expect more.
yeah, expect more than society
Yeah.
currently
Yeah.
does.
That would, yeah. But I don't know. I think with reviews, I always think honesty is good, but also realize when you don't know what you're talking about, and maybe then don't talk about it. Like if you don't know about the Black American experience, and the book is about the Black American experience, you could talk about the language or certain elements of the book, but if you really don't like what a character like did or how they spoke, that's really not on you to say, because you're not a part of that intersection. So I would listen to like Own Voices reviewers.
Yeah, I think like that's a really key thing for me. It's like finding Own Voices reviewers and putting those ideas forward rather than my own.
And seeing if they say it's like accurate, good, or even if they have, because no one's like a monolith, right? So everyone would have different reviewers from the same community even say differently,
Yes.
right?
Of course.
Yeah.
That's
'Cause-
confusing.
Well, yeah, because that's come across with like just like some mental health rep. Some people will be like, "It's amazing," and then some people will be like, "It's terrible." Especially like in the ACE spectrum, some people are like, "That's exactly me," and then some people are like, "That's not me at all. That's terrible rep." And then it's you're listening to those voices, but then also even amongst that community, it's varied. But there's nothing wrong saying that.
No, and I think like that's part of the for that community in particular, part of the awareness that we want to start to uplift in books and stuff is the variation. Like there's no two autistic people anywhere near alike.
And I think it would be beneficial in that way to point out exactly what representation is in the book, so then people who represent that way can actually read that book if they want to feel seen in that book. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where instead of just being like, oh, it has someone who's autistic, but like how?
Right.
Yeah.
How do they act and how do they present?
Yeah. I think that's really
Instead of just
interesting.
being like, oh, there's an ace person, when like, how? Because then you also need to get into the experience and the intersections and like the things that make them more than just that. Because a lot of people too, they want to check boxes when they read and they're like, oh, this has like someone on the A spectrum, and then that's what they'll say. But not everyone on the A spectrum is the stereotypical. There shouldn't be a stereotypical.
No.
Yeah.
And that's the point of books, is like to avoid the stereotype.
Yeah.
You should be reading diversely, but you
Yes.
shouldn't be reading to tick a box. Like,
But it's hard
it's
because
hard
then how
to-
do you diversify if you're not keeping track?
Yes.
I definitely think like quotas and tracking and stuff are important, but I don't pick the books I pick because like I've been doing this big project about acquiring books only written by people of colour or queer authors, but I don't pick the ones I pick because they're written by people of colour or queer authors. I pick them because interesting to me.
Mm.
I'm just narrowing the field of where I'm looking.
Mm. Man, I'm strict. I guess like I have 7 goals, and then like whenever I wrap up at the end of the month, I do my stats. And if I fall below, then the next month I put a bunch of books to bring that up. So I'm constantly balancing like that.
I love how hard
I know, but it's so good.
I love how spreadsheet driven it is.
Yeah, but I do try, and I like people who try to at least think about what they're reading.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm actively trying to pick books that I think are different to my experience.
Yeah. I mean, for me, that's the point of reading.
Yeah.
Which means I'm always, like, the majority of the time I'm going to be talking about experiences that aren't familiar to me. So being able to review in a way that's sensitive to that, but also being able to say, I didn't enjoy this book and I thought it was terrible, is important to me.
I agree. I was just thinking, I do read differently, but I'll read an awful lot of female serial killers.
Are you saying we should
Aqua
be
Tofana.
I'm fine if anybody's wondering. I'm fine. It's okay.
Still alive.
For now. Consider this video evidence.
Is this your last will?
What's the date today?
Let
Let's
me hold up a newspaper.
Sorry.
It's fine.
Did you just apologize to him for being a serial killer?
Like future plans.
Yeah.
Just a blanket future apology.
I've killed a lot of roses. If that
Well-
counts. Do you do? Well, okay, this is different. I'm not gonna
We're getting into it.
We've got a bit sidetracked.
Yeah,
We have
sorry.
got a bit sidetracked.
So, what we're really saying is we have to acknowledge where we're coming from and whether we are, and what the author is doing and whether we're capable of judging that. Is that really what we're saying?
And even if you're only slightly concerned that your privilege may be impacting your view of a book, you should
mention it.
say that.
Yeah, I think
like,
mention it.
You know,
Yeah.
I think if you say, I'm a white person, I might not be getting this, but I didn't enjoy it. Like, I think that's fine.
But I think on BookTube there is a huge hubris problem where
Yeah.
people don't want to admit when they don't understand something, or perhaps they didn't research it, or they don't know the context. Which do you need to know context to understand a book? Because some people don't believe you need to know context. Some people just want to read it as a work of art.
I'm a context.
Oh, me
junkie.
too.
I really
Context, yeah.
I like to pair books up and pick reading orders. Like, I have certain books on my TBR that I won't read until I've read other books that I think will impact how much I understand them. So I think context learning is really
But
important.
some books absolutely assume, like last year I read Swimming in the Dark and it referenced really heavily Giovanni's Room, which I hadn't read at that point.
So that's one of my
And-
conditional reads.
It's good. Well, no, it's bad. It's
Conditional
bad.
read, that's a good phrase.
It's very bad. Abusive relationship.
Yeah. So, but if you want to read Swimming in the Dark, you have to read Giovanni's Room. And like I even in my review, I said I didn't like it because I didn't get, like I was aware that I was not getting the references when I was reading it.
Yeah.
But
I think that more people should be like that and quite open in saying, I didn't get it because I need to do more reading or more learning. And yeah, I think you're right. There is a...
No one watching BookTuber should assume, like, we know everything. Like, we don't know everything. We're just people who read.
Yeah, I think most of us are, like, pretty normal.
some booktubers out there are stunningly average in intelligence.
I'm sitting right here.
You're not a BookTuber. You're a guest. You're
Not even a book.
I don't know.
You're lucky to be here.
Oh, I see. I should be
Both
thankful for what I get.
corporally and mentally.
Corporally.
That's fine. This is fine. But that's interesting, though, your example about that novel in Giovanni's Room. In that instance, you were very aware that there was a context that you were missing. And not to get all Donald Rumsfeld here, but to a certain extent, is there a risk when you're reading authors of minority identifications to which you don't share, or experiences which you don't share, that you don't know what you're missing.
Yeah,
I think that's a
completely.
huge risk.
Yeah.
Completely. That example was really
And I
quite
think-
explicit
Yeah.
with it, so it was really easy to know that I was missing it. But
I think like approaching it expecting, like if you're reading a book by someone who's from a different sort of community than yourself, you should approach it expecting to learn from them.
Yeah.
And I think if you're expecting to learn from them and something's not quite gelling, then my first assumption certainly is that I'm missing something, not that they're doing it wrong. And I think maybe that, like, what's the yoga term? Learner's mindset? Whatever it is.
no idea.
I don't know.
Ooh.
Okay, yogi master.
I
Downward
wish
dog.
that would be so cool. Down dog.
That's a yoga
Nailed
term.
it.
That works.
Meanwhile, the dog is crying at the door.
He was being a bit of a downward
He was
dog.
being a bit of a-
Oh.
Oh my god.
I've clearly never seen our videos before.
That was quality compared to the usual ones
You
on
would
this
have
channel.
been expecting something like that.
I was more sad that I didn't think of it myself. I totally missed the downward dog joke.
He's the king of dad puns,
Yeah,
dad jokes.
he loves them.
Clearly, I've got competition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
I feel like that was really easy to resolve, and it shouldn't have been. Like, is
Yeah.
it just because
Well,
we're all amazing?
We should all. No, we're all
Or-
white.
Yeah.
We should point that out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do think that, like, I actually, before we made this video, I hunted around YouTube for, like, instruction manual from any minority group, whether that be, you know, disabled, racially minority people who are queer, all the things. And no one gave me an instruction manual. So
Which
it's
is
not their job to do the labour.
it's not. It's not their job
Yeah.
to do the labour, but
But when
I
they
did
have
look.
done the labour, we should.
Then we should listen to them.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess we've sort of broken it down as much as we can as white people and do our best until we learn to do better.
Yeah, that's what we do as
Yeah.
readers. But like everyone's different, so
Yeah.
be conscious. Don't be shitty.
Yeah. Also, I think like just not being an asshole when you're a reviewer is also a good thing.
I think if there's a person in the comments that will say, you know, you should do A, B, and C, and they are a person of colour or on the queer spectrum or whatever, that we should be definitely
Yeah.
willing to learn from them. Like, if they're happy to invest their, like, put themselves out there, we should.
To tell us things.
As reviewers, we've got to listen to them, even if we don't agree what they say. We have to understand why they're saying it and where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that was.
yeah. I think that's really the end of the discussion, isn't it? like,
No, it's quite neatly wrapped
yeah,
up because I think we all think kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's really why it was quite so neat because
Yeah.
there's no one here who's trying to say that we should be super mean to black authors because they need to prove that they're, you know,
Should have like brought somebody bigoted along, and
we don't know.
We don't know
anybody.
anyone like
yeah,
that.
that's the problem.
That's a problem.
I was just picturing us going out in the street like with a net, like a butterfly net. Like,
Ah, Southern Cross tattoo. Here we go.
So true.
God, don't say it.
Sorry, everyone.
Don't, it's fine.
All right.
All right. Well, if you haven't subscribed to Kat's channel yet, go and do it right now because clearly she's awesome. Thank you for watching. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.